Hi, everybody. You're listening to the Oneness Junkie podcast, hosted by me, Lydia Smith, a self-proclaimed Oneness Junkie. Oneness Junkie is a place to be inspired, encouraged, and supported. Learn from the individuals who are working to make the world a better place. Let's meet today's guest. Hello, everybody. This is Lydia. Today, I'm excited to introduce you to Dr. Michelle LaMasa-Dawson. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Lydia.
So I'm so excited to introduce the audience to you and the work that you're doing. So just to get started, first, what I would like to do is tell them how I found you. And then I want you to introduce yourself, okay?
Sure.
So a friend of mine had told me about a Amazon Prime movie called Emotion 2.0, which I highly recommend that everybody watch it because it's really impactful. And Dr. Michelle was one of the presenters in the movie. And I really resonated with what you said, Michelle, in that movie. And I reached out, Googled her, found her. She was on vacation. And I asked her if we could, if she still took clients. And I asked her if she could work with me. I told her some of the things I wanted to work on. So we had several mini sessions this summer. And she was so helpful and instrumental in some major breakthroughs for me that I just asked her if she would be a podcast guest because I wanted the rest of the world to know what you are up to, who you're helping, and how the work that you do is kind of coming over to the Americas, to the United States. And I'm going to let you tell us about that. So would you mind, introducing yourself? But really, I want to hear let the audience know a little background, like what led you up to find this work in the first place?
Sure. So first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's really wonderful. And it has been wonderful to be a part of your journey. And so I'm so happy for this connection. And so I think many of us come from trauma. And so my mom was really traumatized. She was given up for adoption. And before she was adopted, she was in 13 different foster homes. She had been physically and sexually abused. And so it really set her up for her whole life. And I saw her have many sicknesses, many surgeries. She got hit by a car. I mean, it was huge kind of trauma. And so I walked with her during that time. I was the oldest. She was not a single mom, but she was single when she was pregnant with me. And it was a sort of a tumultuous story there, but it's been sort of these little graces where I had a stepdad that was in my life the whole time and even took my mom to the hospital to have me.
Oh, wow.
But my mom was really depressed and really wanted to choose death by suicide for much of her life. I would hear her say these things. And because she had so many emotional issues that spilled over into the physical. And then I saw her starting to take medication and go to different doctors, and doctors wouldn't believe her. And so that sort of set me on the road. I really didn't like, traditional Western medicine. I didn't see that it was super effective. I know that there's a time and place, and it's really helped, my grandson. But it was a really interesting sort of journey. And so early on, I thought I was just going to be a counselor. And it is funny how our moms might say something and it sort of leads us in a different direction. And so my mom said, "Oh, you don't want to be a counselor. They're a dime a dozen." So I'm like, okay, well, what else can I be? And so I went through school and I earned a master's in social work, and I worked in the medical placement unit. And then I would see all these kids that had been severely abused and traumatized, and they had medical issues because of drug abuse or this physical or emotional abuse. And so I would go and I would visit them, and oh my gosh, it was so depressing. And so there was no hope.
Yeah. You just wanted to help them.
Yeah, and so it sort of led me to the next phase, and I was a high school teacher, a campus minister, a youth minister for 10 years, and that brought up a whole other thing, and I like to say that God writes straight with crooked lines, and sort of led me all this way. I always thought that, oh, it was by mistake that this happened or this happened, but now I really see that there's this divine hand, has been guiding.
Wow. I've never heard that. That's good.
So it's been, and then, so I was teaching religious studies, and I earned a master's degree in religious studies and have taught at the college level for 25 years.
Wow.
And then I thought, okay, now it's time to go back and do what I really want to do. And so I started a master's in counseling psychology. And when I got there, I thought, oh my gosh, like this is all theory. And I had seen many, many people go to therapy for 25, 30 years and nothing ever happened. Their lives were like always the same. And so it never connected the head to the heart. And so I started discovering different things. And then my aunt was diagnosed with breast cancer. And then that led me to learn about recall healing and all the things that I've learned that way. And
wait, were you at like a workshop, or were you Googling? Like, how did you run it? Because, everything's divine anyway. So how did recall healing come into your space?
Okay, so my cousin's husband is a DO, a doctor of osteopathy.
Okay.
And they were very non-traditional, and so they wanted to find these alternative ways. And so he started looking, and we had many, many conversations about like how stress causes this, stress causes this, and we would say like, I think it's more specific than that. And so he started investigating, and he found that there was a workshop in Canada on German new medicine. And so he went with another osteopathic friend, and he's like, oh my gosh. Well, while he was there, so crazy, but like divine hand, while he was there, Dr. Gilbert Renaud was there at the workshop, taking it to brush up on German new medicine. And he started talking to my cousin. By the end of the workshop, my cousin's husband invited him to San Diego, and he told me, oh, Michelle, you got to come to see this guy. And so I said, oh, okay. So I signed up for the workshop. The moment that I was in the workshop, I was like, oh my God.
You knew.
I want to be gum on this guy's shoe. I want to learn everything that he's teaching. And it was just the stories. I heard you in a podcast say, I love the stories. And me too. I love the stories, and the stories, so he would tell these amazing stories of people, transforming and healing, and things were it was just fantastic.
Like from amazing healings, right? Amazing. Like terminal diseases, right?
Right.
Yeah. Like big stuff.
Yeah, like that my grandson had a brain tumor, like that kind of stuff. Like you find the story, and something would shift. And so with he met with my aunt, and my aunt was clear of cancer for a bit, but in her journey, I actually really began to understand that sometimes cancer and illness is a person's way out.
Yeah. And that's interesting.
And she saw that she didn't have any tumor. Everything was she just cleared it from the things that she discussed. But my uncle kept cheating on her, and she just couldn't do it anymore. And
she wanted to check out.
And so, so for her, that was her solution. And so then, they say metastasis, but then, that comes back, or there's a recurrence. And so she ultimately died. But I really, she led me to this place, all these little hands and things that have happened in my life. But that's a little bit about my background and how I got here.
I just want to reiterate what you said, because I'm pulling it out. You were talking really fast, and I want the audience to hear what you meant when you said sometimes people's diseases are their way of wanting to check out and just basically say, I don't want to be here anymore. And like you can actually create disease to choose for your life to want to end. But isn't it all kind of unconscious though?
Yes, because most of the time when I talk to someone that has a cancer, they will tell me, I'll ask them, hey, do you really want to live? And they'll, most of the time they'll tell me, yeah, of course I want to live.
Yeah.
And for instance, I asked a farmer's wife who had been, his wife for literally 45 years, I think it was. And the cancer created a way for her to not have to clean, to not have to cook anymore. She didn't have to do the laundry. All her
Right.
family.
It was almost freedom just to be sick,
Yeah.
right?
And so they were chipping in. So when I asked her, so what happens when you're well and you're done with this cancer? And so literally like a month and a half later, she was gone.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
And
I can
like
think
on
of
one,
scenarios like that where
right?
people are, but it's so unconscious that if they are well, they actually would have to go and function and be responsible.
Right.
So it's a little bit easier.
Yeah. Or the other thing is lay boundaries, like create boundaries, because I think that is so challenging for people to create boundaries and to say no where they mean no and yes where they mean yes. Or, you know what, I'm so sorry, but that's not going to work for me. And that's really hard when you have been counted on for a long time being a certain way.
Well, and where I feel like we're jumping ahead, I will just make this statement, and then I want you to explain what the work that you do today of how I found you with the recall healing, so that the audience can have a foundation of what we're talking about. But I just want to wrap this one thought up with what we're talking about is when people are in a dynamic, let's just use the husband and wife type scenario, and their survival is dependent upon their relationship working, then you have a lot of motivation to like acquiesce and not function, just because if you started functioning, you might actually, the marriage may break up. It's just, there's a lot there. There's a lot that people may not be aware of that needs to get unpacked, but that's not for me to do. It's just an acknowledgement of recognizing it, seeing beyond the surface and recognizing it. And you see a lot of that with the people that come to you to ask you to help them unpack what's going on for them. You dig deep. So now that's a good segue into you introducing what is the recall healing that you do, and kind of bring people to the foundational part of it where everything kind of starts from, and then share as much as you want. We've got, 30 minutes. So you share what you want.
Okay. Awesome. So recall healing is it's sort of a combination of several modalities and even lines of thinking and theory. And so basically it starts from German New Medicine, and German New Medicine came from Dr. Hammer, whose son was accidentally shot, and he spent like 3 months dying of his wounds, literally dies in Dr. Hammer's arms. 6 months after that, he develops a testicular cancer.
The doctor does, yes.
The doctor does. And so he hypothesizes, like, I eat well, I exercise, I do all the things that according to what I need to do, I'm doing them. There must be some link to my son. And so this was in the late 70s, like 1978. And he had been in Italy, and he went back to Germany. He started studying CAT scans, talking to people that had cancers. And he started understanding like about he created these laws, and he says that we're like a rocket. We're psyche, automatic brain, and body, and that everything that we experience in our life is processed through our psyche. So our religion, our culture, how we're raised, our values, our education, our parents, how they punished us, how we dealt with problems in our life, and that everything is filtered through those lenses. When we have a big problem or an ongoing problem, our automatic brain, which is responsible to keep us alive from moment to moment, so our amygdala, our reptilian brain, this is only concerned with staying alive. And so it will literally download sort of a turbo function into the body according to how a person is feeling. Okay, so if a person is in a big stress or an ongoing stress, the automatic brain can look at that as a threat to our existence. And so in that moment, I need to stay alert. I need to, and so I'm not eating, I'm not sleeping, I'm ruminating about my problem. In that moment, the brain will take our problem that we're stressing over and spinning our wheels, pull it out of our psyche and download it into the body according to how we feel. So that's the science. So it's based on our tissue layer, how we are formed in our mother's womb. And so Dr. Hammer had some great success by just talking to people and getting them to say, hey, what happened in the last 6 months to a year? And he started seeing them heal from just asking those questions. He had a student by the name of Dr. Sabah, who was a Jewish rabbi and a psychologist. And so he understood that it's probably not just a year or 6 months of what's been going on. I bet that there's more to it. And he knew the work of Dr. Mark Frichet and Dr. Anselin Schutzenberger. Actually, I'm not sure she's a doctor, but she was a psychologist. And so Dr. Sabah said that illness is like an iceberg, and that 10% of why a person has an illness is the tip of the iceberg. But there's all of these things beneath the waterline. So there's all of our life experiences. And so the things that we remember and the things that we don't remember. Many times people say, oh, I have a terrible memory, I don't remember anything, all of this. Well, it's not that it's not there. And there's techniques that we can bring some more that is buried in our unconscious into our awareness by asking questions, by looking at the timeline. And so this is one of the things that I help people to understand. Then we drop a little bit deeper into the waterline and we look at what we call the project purpose. And this is the 18 months before a child is born, the 9 months before conception, the conception itself, the pregnancy, the delivery, the whole first year of life, everything that mom and dad had experienced in their life, but they hadn't resolved, that goes into the ovum and the semen. And then they come together. Sometimes people, don't even know each other 9 months before each other, or they hook up, you've got to look at these things. And
right. It matters.
It totally matters. So it all goes into the message that we carry throughout our life.
Isn't that called epigenetics? Is that okay?
It's totally about that. And so but that's even more even in our ancestors. And so in this aspect, everything, and we've always looked at it sort of like this outside and you have a gene for this and a gene for that, but it doesn't really work that way. It works based on the emotions. So the emotions lead the way. And so when we have trauma, and sometimes people think of trauma as like war or, big events, but really it's about the stress of the daily life. What's the day in and day out.
Yeah, getting robbed or, you have a sense of your safety.
Work problems, all of those kinds of things. And like we hate our job. We go to work every day. It sucks.
Yeah, negativity in your head.
All of that, and then the criticism or mom's criticizing us or all of that kind of thing. That really does go into, what we experience in our life. Huh. I tell the story related to Project Purpose of that. My mom she had this trauma. And so when she found out she was pregnant with me, she prayed that I be a girl because a girl was going to save her life. So I carried this little message with me, and much of my work has to do with cancer and chronic illness. So I thought I chose, I'm going in to be a psychologist or do this. And in the end, it's like, oh, wow, I never chose that. It was sort of a gift that was given to me by my mom, and it sort of worked out. And then she loved Michelle for the Beatles song. And she named me Michelle. And my first husband was George. My second husband was John. I live in Georgia. It's so crazy. And then I was joking around on a workshop, and I said, "Oh, I'm done with the Beatles. Everything is like I'm done."
Now the Rolling Stones.
And now I'm married to Mark. And somebody came up to me and said, well, you know, Mark so-and-so killed John Lennon. I'm like,
Oh gosh.
So
Brett, you're not done.
Yeah, exactly. So in any case, that sort of gives you like a fun little story about Project Purpose. But we all carry
the
these
connections.
I like to ask the question, how are you a solution to your parents' psychological suffering? What was going on at around the time of your birth, that you carry as a message and to try to fix for them, which you don't even know that you're doing. So it's something to consider. And then we drop a little bit deeper into the waterline of the iceberg, and we look at what we call the ancestor syndrome. And Anne Anselin Schutzenberger, she would do people's genograms when she would work with them. And she started to notice that when she would work with people, that children with birth order numbers 1, 2, and 3, that they were mostly separated. They were from the same family, but they didn't experience exactly the same thing. But then she called it the magic square. And so it sounds willy-nilly, but it's actually science when you see it and it's there. So children, it's like this vertical pattern, this download of where children, what they carry, how they carry it, and the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And so what she discovered is children with birth order numbers 1, 4, 7, 10, 2, 5, 8, 11, and 3, 6, 9, 12, that they line up. And so when they looked at the ancestral patterns from this, she would find early death, accidental death, same types of illnesses, professions, different stories that would repeat generation after generation. Once the people would see it in their family tree, it would stop the pattern. So it's really about awareness that brings in this understanding, and it can stop many patterns. So this is sort of the core of what we do. And so I help people to understand that. I teach them tools, and then I teach them letting go tools on how to transform that and things that they've had and all of this. And so Gilbert sort of brought all of that together and created Recall Healing. And then he had spiritual practices. And so some of the workshops, we do have, that incorporate even more than just German New Medicine and total biology. It also incorporates some of these spiritual teachings, symbolism and numbers and using like Hebrew and background of these sorts of things. And so that's pretty much Recall Healing in a nutshell.
Oh, wow. That is great. Thank you for that big definition. One of the things I like to do, if anyone of the audience listening has heard any of my previous episodes, I like to share from my own personal experience, because I feel like in my own sharing, I'm hoping to help somebody else maybe trigger a thought or have some type of awareness in their own situation, and I want to share a real scenario of what you just described. So when I was working with you, we went back, and when I was about 19, my mom had told me that I had really been kind of, I don't know if she used the words like unwanted, but just that my dad was nervous about having a fourth child. So the first child was a joy and they were excited about. The second child, they were excited about having. The third child, they were excited about having. But when my mom shared to my dad that she was pregnant again with the fourth one, he kind of freaked out. And he was like, oh my God, how am I going to feed, 6 mouths? And just his own insecurities, were getting the best of him and his fear. And, kudos to him for feeling responsible. He actually did feed my mouth and raise me. So I appreciate that. But what I want to, focus on for the purposes of the Recall Healing is how important the messages were from that moment in time when I was in the Project Purpose for my mother's womb. And so having, an understanding with you about how that actually, when my mom told me when I was 18, like, I was just like, oh, ha, 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 I wasn't wanted, like, big deal. Like, I'm young. I wasn't aware of how it could affect me. But as I started doing work with you and we started digging deeper, and the things that I was telling you that I wanted to work on about myself, I recognized how that period of time and that knowledge and that understanding played a role in how I chose to live my life and how I made certain decisions in my life. And it all kind of matched up with, because I'm 53. So I have got a lot of years now to look back on and to see patterns and to see thought processes. And I won't mention any names, but I will say that one of the things I was aware of is that in kindergarten, this is kind of a nugget story that, resonates for me about this thought that I had, which is when I was like 5 or however old you are in kindergarten, I was the best jump roper. And this little boy wanted me to teach him how to jump rope the way I did. And so I had so he was interested in some skill that I had. And so I had a huge crush on him. At 5 years old, I was like, oh my gosh, I like him in my head. This is all in my head. And I was like, but he's not going to like me. I bet he's not going to like me. And I just had this feeling that I wasn't good enough. And I'm thinking, where does a 5-year-old have a feeling of not feeling good enough? And, where is that message communicated from? Initially, I thought it was like my first 5 years of life, some message that was exposed to me, or to my siblings above, that were older than me. Maybe they got some brunt of some comment. And then I associated it as a 5-year-old with my own self, identifying with it. But really working with you, I recognize that when you have a sense of being unwanted in the womb, and you come out thinking you're unwanted, so that's like where the 5-year-old got the message that this little boy would not be interested in me. And frankly, from a reality standpoint, we all know that little boys of 5-year-olds aren't in kindergarten are not interested in girls anyway. I'm just aware that my sisters were older and they, had little boyfriends in their ages. And so I wanted to be like my sisters because they were 9, 6, and 3 years older than me. So it's just so obvious. And so that little 5-year-old message that I got, I saw it play out multiple times in my lifetime. And it wasn't even true. It wasn't even factual. I just freaking made it up in my head that it was, and so when you get clear and you have an understanding, then the next time I have that thought, it's like, cancel clear. What the heck is that? That doesn't mean anything. That doesn't make sense. So it's so freeing to, have that experience with you and to get resolution and understanding so that I can choose differently, because life every day, every breath I take, every move I make is a choice, right? And I have freedom in that.
That's so awesome. It's such a great, so great.
I just think it's a fun story because it's like, oh, it's 5. Where do you get that message? I can understand if you're 13 and you have a sense of not being good enough because you're inundated with lots of messages, that's kind of harder to recognize. But a 5-year-old, no one gets a message at 5 that you're not wanted. Yeah. Okay. So before we move on, did you want to say anything else about that particular, thing?
I think
that's good.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Okay. So I want to talk a little bit. What I wanted the listeners to understand is that a lot of the work that you do is, and I actually didn't understand this until I took your workshop, and we had all those participants from all over the world on your workshop, and we all shared and interacted and got to get connected. And how many people who are able to come to you have terminal, even life-threatening diseases, and also like mental health challenges. They may be like schizophrenic or multiple person, like just so many things that people have done the traditional route and that wasn't ever a solution for them. And somehow divinity guided them to you and your work. And they have like light bulb moments and switches are flipped and life is changing for them and healing is occurring. resolution. So let's talk about that, because that's the exciting part, in my opinion, about what you get to do, because you're doing something a little bit off the norm, and you work with doctors and therapists to help work together with them, right? Like if a therapist is listening or a doctor is listening to this podcast, they can reach out to you and you can help them get into more of a mode where you ancillarily help their patient. Is that even a word?
I don't know, but that's a cool. I was like, wow, that's a cool word.
Maybe I should make that a word. I love making up words. So, okay, as an ancillary service, they can supplement with their patients. So let's talk about that, because you're very versed in all that.
Well, it's true. It doesn't matter where you're at, in terms of from very, very ill or a professional. We all really have our own traumas. We have the stress of the daily life. And so I help people to understand all the specificity of why they might be experiencing what they're experiencing in their body. I do train therapists also and especially in Europe. I train a lot of therapists and doctors. And so it's so cool to see that really people are beginning to understand on a deeper level about how the mind is not disconnected from the body and nothing happens by mistake. And the things that we spin in our mind are actually going to, they can have some kind of impact on our body. And it's very specific in the emotion and the experience. And the crazy thing is that it is life-changing in the sense that it applies to everything. So no longer do I walk around in my life thinking that something is by mistake or, just like, random. There's no such thing as random, that really everything that's happened and happening is always part of a larger picture. And so wherever the people are that they're coming from, that's the coolest thing, is because there's these basic tools that we can all use and begin to apply them to our life to really transform the way we're living and understanding the things. It makes us so that we're not a victim of the circumstances, that we do have choice, like you said, and that we can do something about what's going on with behaviors, with mental illness, with physical illness, with chronic illness, whatever it might be. It can transform because of having this understanding.
You were telling us a story or like a case study of eczema in that workshop. Tell that little story about the boy. Do you remember that one?
I'm not sure which one it was, but maybe about the little boy with the cheek.
Yeah, with the eczema. And then well, you may not remember it, which is fine. We can move on to one you do remember. No, but I just resonated with eczema because as a child, I had eczema. And I was trying to match back what you were saying to say like, ooh, what was happening to me during that period when I had eczema, because you have like a encyclopedia that'll show you, what eczema is matched up with. So I don't know if you know that one off the top of your head, but you're welcome to share one that you do know.
No.
I don't mean to put you on the spot.
No, it's all good. I do have a lot in my mind.
I know.
I don't remember all the stories, but the story that comes to mind, which is an eczema story. Well, actually, two stories come to mind.
Okay, tell them both. We got time.
Okay. So
I love stories.
So eczema is the conflict underneath eczema is a simple separation. So when a child is separated from their mom, the brain sends a message to the skin. Well, the skin is our biggest organ related to contact. And it's also related to our territory. But especially with skin, it's our contact with mama, with dad, especially with mama when we're infants though. And so this, a simple separation. So I'm separated from mom. The brain sends a message to microulcerate the skin. So we don't know that this process is going on, but this is what happens in what we call the conflict active. When there's a stress, I'm separated from mom, I'm separated from mom, I'm separated from mom. And then when the child is reunited with mom, then that's when the eczema will appear. The brain sends a message to heal that, and then the little scabs and the itchiness come up. So there's this little guy, and he's maybe 6 months old, or he might have even been a little bit younger. And mom wanted to go away for the weekend, and so she was weaning him, and so she took him to the doctor, and the doctor told her, oh, he started getting eczema on his cheek, I think it was just on one cheek. And so the doctor said, oh, put a little bit of bleach in the bathtub.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh, seriously. So my husband knows like recall healing and knows about like the different things. And so he was talking to his buddy, and his buddy's like, yeah, the doctor told him, the little guy, has eczema. And my husband said, is she trying to wean him already? And just had that insight. And he's like, well, yeah, she wants to go away with her girlfriends. And he's like, stop. The baby needs to be connected to mama still. And so she stopped it. Eczema went away within a day. And
wow.
So it's so crazy and so it was like he was reconnected with, and it was on his cheek, because that's where the cheek would touch the breast. And so, it makes sense when you look at it from this kind of perspective.
Yeah. Like a whole medical perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing. Do any other, I love the stories. The stories are so impactful. What are some of the other ones that are big ones that you tell that help people make a connection to their ailments?
Yeah. So the other story that came to mind is an interesting story, and it sort of brings in the understanding about how the child can be impacted. And so this woman that I was seeing, she actually had head to toe eczema. And she, we worked on why she might have eczema. And so when she was a little girl, her parents were really like, abusive to each other. Her father was an alcoholic and would be abusive to the mom. The mom would try to fight back, throw things at him. And so they got divorced. And so then she grows up, she gets married, and she marries a guy. And while she's pregnant, her father begins to understand, oh, my daughter's pregnant, and I want to reconnect, and I want to have, a relationship, and I don't want to. And so he had recovered, recovering alcoholic. And so he came and he apologized to her. And then her mom found out that she was talking to her dad. And so then her mom got totally pissed off at her for talking to her dad. And so waist up happens to be related to the father. Waist down relates to the mom. So when she was in connection with dad, the eczema would heal. And so then she'd have that. And then she'd be in conflict with mom. And then she'd mom started talking to her again. And so then she had eczema on the bottom. So we talked all about that and found many different places where she felt separated, where it was really hard, when dad left, when mom left. And so then, and then she told me a story about during her pregnancy, her husband cheated on her. And so they went to therapy. He was really sorry. He didn't want to, he was never going to do that again. And so she forgave him and, moved on. Right. So I know what I know, and so I said, so, like we worked on most of the session was on this eczema. And then about maybe 10 minutes before the end of the session, I asked her, how does your daughter feel about your husband? And she's like, oh, my daughter, she's 4 years old, and she doesn't really go to her dad. She won't let him love on her. She won't sit in his lap. She cries for me all the time. She doesn't really want him. And so I said, because it's about energy and it's about the feeling. And so I said, talk to her picture or while she sleeps and tell her the story. Honey, when mommy was pregnant with you, daddy and I went through something big, but I resolved my problem. And you don't have to carry that for me any longer.
Yeah.
I release you from that. So the next session, she had cleared up in her eczema about 80%.
Wow.
And then, so we found some more stories, but she said, but the most amazing thing that I can let you know about is that she said, my daughter is in love with my husband. And she said, for instance, last night I was putting her to bed and I said, I love you, Taya. And she said, I love daddy.
it switched on her.
And so then she
flipped.
said, she said, she's like, my husband wants to work with you now. so
You're a miracle worker.
But it's just it's so fun, there's that. And
yeah.
And,
do you remember what non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is? Because I remember you talking about that. And my dad, he's passed away, but he had that. And I was wondering what that to make the connection.
Sure.
What is that?
So lymphoma in general, anything lymphatic system has to do with feeling devalued. So
that so matches my dad. It so matches him.
And so it's just the nuances of what his conflict was related to and why he would have and where he would have it. And so it's pretty amazing.
When you take when you have the understanding, if you take the time to understand your parents who raised you that may not have raised you the way you think you should have been raised, or that you wish you would have been raised, or the way you wish you would have been taught, or the way you wish you would have been treated, once you can go back and look at them like as an observer and not as a victim, like you're not the victim of them, but you're just observing who their life was, what they went through, why they had the beliefs they did, why they treated you the way they did, him being in fear, him being feeling devalued or not valued enough. I remember he used to say, like, if we ever questioned something, he would say, his response was, I'm an engineer. I know what I'm talking about. That is such a statement of someone who does not feel value. Exactly. To say it like that, And so it's like he had to prove it to his 6-year-old daughter, that he was an engineer and, I have value. I know what I'm talking about, but we're 6 years old. We don't understand that that's where they're coming from. But as an adult and as a person who became more conscious of, my own behavior, my own patterns, my own reactions to maybe the environment that I grew up in, I get to choose and change it, right? That's the whole point. Like we can't change the past, but with help or on your own or however you want to do it, it's about you being able to create the life that you desire, the freedom that you desire and the resolution that you need so that you do have a clear body of health.
Absolutely. And the other thing that you said about, you can't change the past, but we often say it's never too late to have a happy childhood, because like what you said about becoming the observer, when you become the observer, you end up seeing that your parents were doing the best they could with the resources that they had.
Right.
It gives you the ability to be hurt and angry because some of the things that they did really, really did hurt and make you angry. And that's okay. And that you can keep going and not be stuck there. And so you end up like growing your little girl and little boy self up to have an understanding and to be able to value, to love yourself and to grow more fully into yourself. This appreciation. I think, like the tagline on my email of honor the past, live in the present and create the future. And that's really what this work is all about.
That's beautiful. And yes, I do know your emails. And that's so funny you would say that, because I was going to bring up that I saw an email. Don't you have a workshop? I get your emails. So don't you have a workshop coming up? Is it January?
It is. It's January.
Yeah. Tell us about that, because anyone who's listening, do they have to have like intro coursework with you, or can they just jump into a workshop? Like, what's the protocol?
So I invite everyone to the workshops, and I usually will spend the first part of the workshop sort of giving the basics, sort of like I did today.
Yeah.
And then we jump into the theme of the workshop. This happens to be a theme workshop. We have levels, like the levels 1, 2, and 3, which people ask, oh, can I take the level 3 without taking level 1?
Right.
And so it's really about, we're covering the basics in the foundational workshops, the 1, 2, and 3. And then what we end up doing is different body parts and diseases. This workshop in January, the 13th through the 15th, is on relationships.
Oh.
So it talks about relationships, the dynamics that we come from with our family, what we had with our parents, our own relationship dynamics, us as kids, our parents as kids, talks about all of those kinds of things, and looks at it from a biological recall healing perspective. We even talk about colors and how, like, some couples, they actually aren't compatible biologically, and so sometimes that will equate like prostate cancer, type of cancer, and so we look at, we're going to look at different
when you say colors, what do you mean? I didn't mean to.
So no, this is totally okay. So when I say colors, it's like we look at colors, and so by our personality, it resembles a color. So from some of the spiritual work that Gilbert has done, and so that's where we're bringing this in, and so we'll talk about different colors, and then how that person resonates with that. Like, oh, this is my favorite color, or this is my favorite color, and how do they match with our husband's favorite color, or wife?
What's your color?
So I have many colors. So
you do? Are those all your colors? Purple, that nobody can see what I'm seeing, but purple, yellow. I thought those were the chakras.
Yeah, they are. Totally.
So you have a lot, like, so you're more varied. You have a lot of different colors.
Well, I really love red. I really love turquoise, and I do love purple. And so, but it's interesting because, some of the men, my husband's, it's like black and gray. It's like, no. So it's just interesting. And it gives you more insight about the relationships that you have. It talks about various illnesses too, and sexually transmitted diseases. We talk a little bit about infertility. And so it sort of covers a wide range related to relationship.
That's exciting. Do you know can you spout out when the dates are?
The dates are January 13th through the 15th.
Okay.
And it's a Thursday all day, a Friday all day, and a couple hours on Saturday.
Oh, okay, cool. Awesome. So if someone's interested in like learning more about you, where do they go? What's your website?
You can go to soultreetransformations.com, and there is now the ability to register online.
Oh, cool.
And so that's cool. That's like the new upgrade. And so they can find out all about me, about my work. I have, I have several podcasts. And so if they're interested, that's a way.
And you've got some stuff on YouTube too, right? People can Google you and find your YouTube stuff.
Yeah. For sure. And it's, even if they just did Michelle LaMasa, that's going to bring up La-Masa Schrader, which was my former name, and La-Masa Dawson, which is my now forever name. And so.
Awesome. Yeah. That's good. And that's Masa with one S.
Yes.
LAMASA. All right. So, I think that we've covered a lot. And we're wrapping up on the time. I really appreciate you spending the time to let the audience know about recall healing, what you're up to. Do you still take clients? Is it a case by case? And
it is a case by case, but I also have practitioners that I'm training that people can get in with, and so they would still call.
So they should still just inquire through your website, and then you can figure out what you can do. Good. Yeah. Well, one of the things that I don't know if I think you listened to a few of the podcasts, but on some of the ones with the guest, I came up with this thing that I wanted to do for my guest. And when I know the person, it's so much easier. And so this is really easy for me. I called it Mirror Reflections. And what it means is I want to project back to you, like I'm a mirror, who you are in the world and what you're projecting out there and how people are receiving it. So, Dr. Michelle, you are such a light in the world. I saw that from the moment I laid eyes on you on that movie. I was so drawn to you. I was so attracted to your energy and your words, and even just the way that you speak, and you're so grounded. And I also like that we laugh, like this is heavy stuff, but we can also know that laughter is part of the levity of life, is part of the freedom, right? And so working with you, I really resonated with the way that you worked with me, which was allowing me to be in my freedom, allowing me to be self-expressed. You just met me where I was at. And I love that. I think that is such a gift that you have, that you offer to the world. And I know that as you continue to grow inside of the United States and around the world globally, that, speaking to the masses and the global forums and the YouTubes and stuff will be more of the way that you'll reach more people. But I just want you to know that, you're so special. You're such a divine person out there that has, come to your calling, and you're truly living your purpose. And like, I feel it.
Lydia, thank you so much.
I'm so grateful for you. So thank you for, the work that we've done together, because, sometimes there's people out there. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and he was like, I don't really know who to work with, and I just think about how, lucky I am that, I found you, because I've worked with a lot of different people over the years, and I think that we're all like layers of an onion. So you're at different stages of your life. And so different things are in front of you to work on with that person at that time. And I just feel like, I'm just, if you remember, I just dove in, right? I wasn't holding anything back. You didn't have to dig out anything. I was just dishing it out, and you were trying to take it, It's like volleyball or something, what's badminton? That's what I was thinking of, with the little birdies. So, and you were just able to go with the flow. And I appreciate that about you. And you do that for everyone. I saw you in your workshop and all the people you were able to manage and work with, simultaneously. And, you're just like a chameleon, you're able to just match the person that, is reaching out to you, and you match them perfectly. So it's beautiful to watch, is what I'm trying to say.
Lydia, thank you so much. And truly, I have been so blessed by you and, and your work, and the fact that you were willing to dive in like that. It really makes my job a lot easier, honestly.
Right.
And I really have appreciated your journey and the pain that you have gone through in your life, and who you have become and are becoming, and how you're touching people's lives. And so I'm honored. I'm honored to be a part of this, and to keep our friendship and our work going. It is awesome. So
yes. Well, and whenever you want, you are always welcome to come back and have a conscious conversation about a topic that you want to discuss. You just reach out with an email and say, hey, I want to, do you want to discuss relationships or whatever? And you can talk all about what your upcoming workshop is, because I just think that the world needs to hear more from Dr. Michelle.
Thank you. I would love to do that. So
yes, well, totally. It is an open call. You're a busy lady, so you reach out to me whenever you want to, and we'll make a schedule opportunity. Because you know what? All it is an hour or less out of your schedule, and it's super easy just to go ahead and knock it out, and then it's up there indefinitely, and it lives up on Apple Podcast or Amazon Music, or and the thing is by doing that, we're able to create a platform where spirit can work with the audio to put it in front of the right person at the right time. We already did the work, right? And then that's when it happens,
Well,
that's when they find the resolution.
Just like Emotions 2.0, and like out of the blue, you watch it one day, and now here we are.
I know. And it's all connected, right? And we understand that it's all connected, which is where oneness is, all about. We are one, right? We are all connected. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful holiday. And yes, and a happy new year. And I look forward to talking to you or seeing you maybe soon in the new year, maybe 2022.
Yes, I would love that. I can't wait.
So, okay. Thank you for your time today.
My pleasure.
Bye-bye. We've reached the end of this episode. If you'd like to continue with this inspirational journey, be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss out. If you are a self-proclaimed oneness junkie, get yourself a t-shirt and spread the message of oneness in your community. And finally, if you have a story to share or know someone that should be a guest on this podcast, contact us at onenessjunkie.com. See you next time. And remember, when we heal ourselves, we heal the world. Compassion starts with you and me.